The snow fell in thick, heavy sheets whipping across the frozen plains of Cairn 7. The planet was not like Earth. Its sky glowed a faint violet and jagged black rocks jutted from the ice like broken teeth. A storm had begun suddenly, the winds carrying snow sharp as knives, and the human reconnaissance team had barely survived the crash. Their ship, a sleek exploration vessel, lay shattered against a ridge, pieces of metal and glass half buried in the snow. Lieutenant Mark Davis, the human warrior, wiped the frost from his face and scanned the horizon. He had seen harsh planets before, but nothing like this. The cold here gnawed at the bones, and the howling wind seemed alive, almost threatening. The rest of the team struggled to keep pace, their breath steaming in the air, their faces pale with fatigue. Shelter. We need shelter now, Mark shouted, his voice carrying only a little over the storm. He led the group toward a distant structure, dark against the violet sky. From a distance, it looked abandoned, broken by time and violence. But as they drew closer, Mark noticed something strange. Outside the ruins, shackles hung from metal chains, and between them stood a woman. Her body was slim but strong, and her eyes burned with an intensity that cut through the cold like fire. She was chained to a metal post, and the snow clung to her clothing. It was thin, not enough for this freezing planet. She lifted her head as the humans approached. "This night, I don't want to sleep alone in the cold," she said in a voice that was rough from frost and hunger, but carried pride and courage. Mark froze for a moment. He had seen many things in the galaxy, slavers, prisoners, aliens, but something about her presence felt different. She was human, he realized, though her clothes and features marked her as foreign. He took a step closer, his instincts telling him to help even if danger lurked nearby. "Who are you?" he asked. The woman's eyes narrowed, studying him as if measuring whether he was friend or foe. "I am Apache," she said finally, her accent strange from years away from Earth. "Captured, taken far from home. I survived, but I am cold and I do not wish to sleep alone." Mark's heart tightened. Here was a warrior, someone who had survived unimaginable hardship, and yet she was vulnerable in the harsh night. He signaled to his team to be careful. Alien patrols might be near. The chains were old but strong, and he could see she had been struggling against them for a long time. "We'll help you," he said, stepping forward cautiously. "Can you move?" She shook her head. "Chains. Too strong, but together maybe." Mark knelt beside the post, examining the shackles. He was trained in combat, yes, but also in improvisation. The metal was thick, but with the tools salvaged from the wreck, he could break it. As he worked, the wind blew harder, carrying with it the howl of distant creatures, large predators adapted to the cold and darkness. The woman watched silently, her eyes unwavering even in the storm. "You fight well," Mark said, trying to break the tension. She gave a faint smile. "I have survived, because I must," she said simply. Her words were not boastful. They carried the weight of experience of someone who had faced death more times than she could count. By the time the chains fell away, night had fully descended. The snowstorm was relentless, and the ruined outpost offered little protection. Mark and the woman, whose name he learned was Aylin, moved inside. The building was cold, with cracks in the walls that let the wind in like a living thing. Still, it was better than the open plains. Mark gathered what little warmth they could from damaged supplies and directed the team to build a makeshift shelter inside. The group worked silently, the tension heavy in the small space. Aylin sat close to the fire, rubbing her arms against the cold. Mark noticed the fine lines of exhaustion on her face, the way her hands shook slightly from frostbite. He wanted to speak, to comfort her, but he knew words alone could not do it. Instead, he prepared a small meal from rations, offering it to her. She accepted without a word, her eyes softening briefly. "You humans. Different," she said, chewing slowly. "Some cruel. But you help." Mark nodded, understanding more than she realized. Humanity had often been underestimated in the galaxy, thought weak or fragile compared to the alien empires they had encountered. Yet here, in this freezing wasteland, their ingenuity and courage were often the only difference between life and death. Night deepened. The storm raged on and sleep was impossible. Aylin remained close to the fire, but her eyes kept darting to the shadows outside. Mark sat nearby, his mind racing. He knew alien patrols were not far, and this ruined outpost might soon become a battleground. Hours passed. The wind howled, the snow battered the walls, and yet Mark could not shake the feeling that Aylin's presence changed something. There was a spark in her, a reminder that humans, even far from Earth, could survive against impossible odds. He remembered the stories of Apache warriors on Earth, their resilience, their courage. Here was a living example, far from home but unbroken. Suddenly, a noise outside made them both tense, scraping metal against ice. Footsteps heavy and deliberate. Mark signaled for silence. The group froze, listening. The aliens had found them. Aylin's hand moved instinctively toward a small blade hidden in her belt. "They come," she whispered. "We fight together?" Mark nodded. Together. When the aliens appeared, the humans were ready. Mark and Aylin moved as one, a seamless combination of strategy and instinct. She fought with precision, her movements sharp and calculated, each strike efficient. Mark covered her flank, using improvised weapons and environmental advantage. Despite the cold and exhaustion, their coordination was perfect. The alien patrol was relentless but disorganized. They underestimated the human-Apache duo. In the chaos, Mark saw the courage in Aylin, not just to survive but to protect. She did not wait for orders. She acted. And Mark realized something. Humans had always been underestimated in the galaxy because no one expected their will to endure, their creativity, their relentless determination. When the last alien fell, the storm had grown even fiercer. Both were panting, exhausted but alive. Aylin looked at Mark, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "You humans. Strange," she said, almost smiling. "You do not run. You fight, even when..." Hopeless, Mark could only nod. "We survive," he said. "That is what humans do." They huddled closer to the fire, sharing warmth. The rest of the team watched silently, some in awe, some in disbelief. The bond between Mark and Aylin was forming quickly, forged in battle and necessity. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the ruined outpost, there was a fragile sense of safety. A night survived. Together. As the hours passed, Aylin spoke of Earth, of her people, and of the battles she had faced before the aliens captured her. Mark listened, fascinated by her resilience, by the strength that had kept her alive across the stars. And in her stories he recognized something vital: hope. Even in the coldest, harshest places, hope could endure. By dawn, the storm had eased slightly. The snow still fell, but the winds were calmer. Mark and Aylin stood at the edge of the outpost, looking out over the frozen plains. The journey ahead would be dangerous. The aliens would not forget, and the planet offered no mercy. But for the first time since the crash, Mark felt a flicker of optimism. They were no longer alone, not while they had each other. "We leave soon," Mark said. "The world out there, it's still dangerous." Aylin nodded, her chains long gone, but her vigilance still intact. "I survive. If I do not walk alone," she said. Mark realized then that this was more than survival. This was a partnership, a bond between two humans from different worlds, different times but united by courage, by will, and by a determination to endure, even in the coldest night. As they prepared to move, the wind carried the faint sound of distant alien engines. The journey was just beginning, and the challenges ahead were immense. But together, Mark and Aylin would face them all. Alone they might have fallen. Together they could endure anything, and in that frozen, hostile world, a human warrior and a chained Apache woman found something rare: trust, courage, and the beginnings of a legend that the galaxy would one day remember. The storm had weakened by morning, leaving a blanket of soft snow across the jagged plains. Mark and Aylin stepped carefully over the uneven ground, scanning for alien patrols and the dangers that hid in the frozen wasteland. Their breath steamed in the icy air, and the faint violet sky gave the world an eerie, otherworldly glow. They both knew that survival depended on movement, on staying ahead of the predators that roamed this harsh world. Mark led the way, his eyes sharp, every sound and shadow analyzed. Aylin followed, her senses tuned to the land in a way that made Mark realize she had not only survived captivity, but had become attuned to any environment that threatened her life. She moved silently, her steps precise, avoiding weak ice or loose rocks. Mark marveled at her skill. She had the instincts of a hunter, the training of a warrior, and a mind that calculated every risk. As they climbed a ridge, Mark pointed to the horizon. "There," he said. "I think I see a safe zone. The old alien research facility. If we reach it, maybe we can find supplies. And a way off this planet." Aylin nodded, her eyes scanning the distance. "Aliens. Patrol near there, but we can pass if we move carefully." The wind picked up again, whipping through the ridges. Snow stung their faces, and each step was a struggle. Their survival depended on timing, stealth, and endurance. They moved slowly, communicating in whispers, signaling each other with gestures learned in battle. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to bite at their bodies. Mark felt the cold like a weight pressing down on him, and he noticed Aylin's hands trembling as she adjusted the thin covering around her arms. "Keep going," he urged. "We are almost there." She glanced at him, her fierce eyes softened by fatigue. I have survived alone for years. But it is easier with you." Mark's heart tightened. The bond between them had grown in ways he had not expected. In the face of danger, in the cold, in the alien wilderness, trust had become their strongest weapon. He gave her a small, reassuring nod. "We survived together. That is how it works." At last they reached the ruins of the research facility. It was massive, jagged towers of metal and glass, some broken, some twisted by time and neglect. The entrance was partially buried in snow, but it offered shelter. Mark and Aylin moved quickly inside, seeking warmth and cover. The interior was dark, the shadows long and shifting. Broken equipment and alien artifacts littered the floor. Mark examined the remnants for anything useful: tools, weapons, energy packs, while Aylin kept watch, her senses alert for intruders. The silence was deceptive. Somewhere outside, the alien patrols were surely hunting. "We rest briefly," Mark said. "Then we plan our next move." Aylin sank to the floor, rubbing her arms for warmth. "I thought I would die out there. But humans, you are strange, strong, and stubborn." Mark smiled faintly. "We survive. That is what humans do. We do not give up, even when the odds are against us." Their rest was short. The faint hum of alien engines reached them, growing louder as patrols neared. Mark grabbed his weapon, Aylin sliding a blade into her hand. Together they moved silently through the corridors, using shadows and debris as cover. Their coordination was seamless, built from shared danger and instinctive understanding. The patrol consisted of 4 alien soldiers, heavily armed and armored. They were searching for survivors, moving methodically through the ruins. Mark and Aylin waited for the perfect moment, then struck. The humans were lightning in motion, Mark using ranged weapons and improvised traps, Aylin moving with deadly precision in close quarters. The aliens were caught off guard, their confidence shattered by the unexpected skill and tenacity of the 2 humans. When the patrol was defeated, Mark and Aylin allowed themselves a moment of relief. "We can't stay here," Mark said. "They will send more," Aylin nodded. "We moved together, always together." They set out across the frozen plains again, guided by what Mark hoped was a safe path toward the planet's edge, where human reinforcements might locate them. The journey was brutal. Snowdrifts rose higher than their knees, hidden crevices threatened to swallow them whole, and alien predators adapted to the cold stalked them silently. Yet neither faltered. Each step, each movement, was a testament to their determination to survive. During the march, Aylin shared more of her story. She had been captured years ago during a raid on her village on Earth. The aliens had brought her to their colonies, intending to break her spirit and use her as a tool. But she had resisted, using her training to escape whenever possible. She had learned their tactics, their weaknesses, and had survived on her own, until the day Mark's team arrived. Mark listened, impressed and humbled. He realized that humanity's strength was not just in technology or weapons, but in resilience, creativity, and the ability to endure. Aylin was living proof of that strength. As night fell, the temperature plummeted further. Their movements became slower, more deliberate. Hypothermia was a constant threat, and exhaustion weighed heavily on their bodies. Mark knew that finding a safe place to rest, even briefly, was critical. They spotted a small cave entrance hidden behind a ridge, partially shielded from the wind. It was not perfect, but it offered temporary refuge. Inside the cave, they built a small fire from scraps and debris, the flames flickering against the icy walls. Aylin huddled close, and Mark handed her a piece of rationed food. "We survive," he reminded her. "No matter what comes next." Hours passed. The storm outside continued, but inside the cave there was a fragile sense of safety. They spoke quietly, sharing thoughts, fears, and strategies. Each story Aylin told strengthened Mark's respect for her, and he realized that her survival instinct was unmatched. Suddenly, a distant roar echoed through the cave entrance. The alien predators were close. Mark grabbed his weapon, motioning for Aelin to stay behind him. Together they moved toward the sound, anticipating the creature's attack. The predators emerged from the shadows, massive, multi-limbed beasts with ice-crusted fur. Their eyes glowed with a feral intelligence, and they charged with deadly speed. Mark and Aelin fought as one. He used traps and precise shots to slow the creatures, while Aelin moved with lethal grace, striking weak points with her blade. Each movement was calculated, a blend of human ingenuity and warrior instinct. The battle was fierce, but together they prevailed, the predators falling to the snow-covered ground. Breathing heavily, Mark turned to Aelin. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her chest heaved with exertion. "I am alive, because you are here. We survive, together." The following days were a test of endurance and courage. They navigated treacherous ice fields, avoided alien patrols, and scavenged what supplies they could from the abandoned facility. Their partnership deepened, built on trust, respect, and the shared will to endure. Each obstacle they overcame strengthened their bond, and Mark realized that humanity's true power was in cooperation and courage, even in the most alien and hostile environments. Finally, after days of travel and struggle, they reached the edge of the planet's frozen plains. Human rescue ships, guided by Mark's team's emergency beacon, descended from the sky. The sound of engines and the sight of lights brought a surge of relief and hope. Aelin looked at the ships, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and awe. Mark extended his hand to her. "We made it," he said simply. She took his hand, her grip strong and steady. "We survived, because we did not walk alone." The rescue team approached, amazed at the duo's survival. Aelin, once a captive, now stood tall and proud, a symbol of resilience and human determination. Mark watched as she reunited with the rescuers, knowing that this was not the end of her story, but a new beginning. As they lifted off from the frozen planet, Mark looked out at the endless expanse of ice and sky below. The storm had tested them, the alien threats had tried to break them, but together they had endured. Humanity had once again proven its strength, not in technology or firepower, but in courage, resilience, and the ability to survive against impossible odds. Aelin turned to Mark, her expression calm but fierce. "Human, you are strange, but strong. I trust you," Mark nodded. "And you, Aelin, you are stronger than any alien could imagine. You remind us why we survive." The ship soared into the stars, leaving the frozen world behind. The human warrior and the Apache woman had faced death, cold, and alien enemies, and they had survived. Together they were a force to be reckoned with, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. And though the galaxy was vast and filled with dangers, they knew one truth above all. No matter the threat, no matter the cold, no human or Apache warrior would ever face it alone. And so their journey continued, not as captor and captive, not as strangers, but as equals, allies and survivors, ready to face whatever the galaxy dared to throw at them next.